And welcome everyone to another OSR tabletop live stream with myself, DM Bloodworth, or in this case, GM Bloodworth, because I am going to be talking about um, game mastering in OSR and in indie gaming. And what prompted me to, to think of this particular question is that I know beginning sometime last week or so, there have been a slew of videos across many of the channels that I watch that are either 5e focused or OSR focused or indie or mixed focused and both large and small channels. And when I say large, like 100,000 plus, and small, like my own or others around that between 3 and 5,000 level channels. And the question was, or just once again, the comments about there being a DM shortage with Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm going to narrow that down to more of a 5e issue, but that there seems to be a move towards by Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro and whatnot to move away from tabletop role playing and changing the dynamic between the game master and the player, and this has actually been going on far longer, far before the OGL crisis and far before any mention of a Dungeons and Dragons VTT. This really goes back to some of the hints and tips and some of the direction of how they were describing that relationship between the game master and the player, and how it had progressively gone more and more player centric. Now, I don't want to, I don't want to conflate or um, mix terms here. And I will open up the chat. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the chat yet. Um, so I don't want to mix terms here or meanings of terms here. So the reason there is a DM shortage is because players think they can do anything. And when you tell them no, they argue. Yes, that is certainly the case. And what I'm trying to get to is, and actually your point there, Big Vic, is that it comes down to, I think, a misunderstanding of what player agency actually means, and we'll see if you agree with me here as well, or possibly even disagree with it. But when when modern players hear player agency, I'm not putting all modern players into the same basket. I don't mean to do that, but it just seems to be that more often than not, when modern players hear player agency and they hear that a DM or a game master wants to take away from player agency, they think of it in the terms of it happening in the moment. In other words, the player character is being controlled in some way outside of the desires of the player. So it's like, mind control is like a big taboo because you lose control over your character, and other things where the character is forced to do things that they wouldn't necessarily the player doesn't necessarily want them to do. And when I think of player agency, though, I think of player agency, or the limitation on player agency is before gameplay actually began. All right. There's a limitation on player agency when you tell the players, well, you're going to roll your attribute score, 3d6, and in the order that you rolled them. And now that is going to determine what is the best character class your character might, you might be able to run that character as. I mean, if you end up with a 6 intelligence, you've basically taken being a magic user off the table. All right, and so the modern player would say, well, that's a very flawed system because you're stripping me of player agency. You're stripping me of that choice in the beginning. Whereas the game master might point to the rules and say, well, this is how the rules are written. And so we're using this. And at my table, this is what it's going to be. And I've seen this firsthand when the game master will say, well, that character class, and I've done this myself, that character class is not going to be something that's open to you. I tried doing this one time with, I really don't like bards. I don't think that it's a very useful character class. Certainly not in AD&D First Edition. Do I consider it a useful character class? And I think that the experience point expenditure required to play that class, actually get to that level, is really a monumental waste of experience points and time, just to achieve something that you could have just as easily just dual classed your character, or just played a single class all the way up to, you would be ninth level instead of 5 and 5, that kind of a thing. So there I see there I see like some of the differences in, player agency. I don't see the problem with denying certain classes or certain races, or certain what ended up being optional rules anyway, implementing certain optional rules in the game as being an attack on player agency. So I will continue checking on what Big Vic is saying. So what DM wants to sit and argue in front of a group of players? Now, yeah, it's not something that I have seen very often in the OSR and in running independent games. All right, and that's the real point I want to make here, is that on the few occasions where I've seen pushback from a player towards the game master, and I've never experienced this directly to a certain extent. It's never been, oh well, this is what I want to do, and you should, if you're a good game master, you should allow me to do it. I've never had that kind of a push on what I'm allowing at the table, but I have seen uh, dungeon masters where I was playing in the game, and I've had seen, the player come in, obviously with 5e experience and wanting to play 5e in a D&D Homes Edition game setting and game rules and such, and it's like they're just not compatible. That character class and that character race would not be compatible with what the game master was looking to do. and the game master allowed the player to you could take a pre-gen for now for this session, and then you can always create a character that will fit within what I'm doing. And the the person basically took their ball and went home, feigned illness, and in a very storming off, stomping off kind of an attitude, just left the game in the session. And we all sat there and rubbed our brows and were like, all right, we dodged the bullet there, because we could see it was going to be a problematic experience going all the way through. So again, I am taking this from a game master's experience in running OSR games and running independent games. Many times for the first time, like today, I did my first session of Fallout, the first time I've ever run Fallout. I had some new players that I've never met before in the in the party. It was a party of 4 players, and um, yes, we had some tweaks to do, and we had some rules questions that came up. We had some glitches or things to work out with Roll20 and everything. It was not the smoothest mechanically um, game sessions that could be, but it was, for considering it was the first time that I'm running the system, the first time that all of them were playing the system. Well, maybe one of them had played the system before. Um, and only once did a rule kind of come up as part of the conversation, and then I took a look at it and said, all right, well, this is how I kind of interpreted that. But to me, it seemed like six of one, a half a dozen another. It had to do with the action point pool, and whether the action point pool is generated as a community pool, or do the players generate it amongst themselves first individually, and then they can contribute to the pool if they had an excess. I mean, to me, it kind of worked out. I listened to the player and it was like, all right, yeah, I can see how it's set up that way. It's a little bit different in the Conan 2D20 system, and it's different the way that I used it in Shadow Dark. But you know, we immediately got past it and just rolled with it. It didn't become this big drama over it. And actually, the player was trying to be very discreet with it, sending me a private message saying, "Hey, you know what? I just kind of took a look at this, and I don't want to interrupt the gameplay now, but I allowed for it because this was our first session. I wanted to make sure that we're kind of on the right path and the right pace, with the game. I wasn't so much worried about, you know, the flow of everything in our very first session. I was more worried about just getting used to each other and getting getting some of the nuts and bolts of the system down even better. So I don't think that you would have that same kind of experience with a 5e or a Pathfinder or a another game system that is very mainstream, where the players' expectations are that they're going to come in, and the balance of decision making is going to be more in their favor than the game masters. So I'll let you all continue um, contributing to that. So let's see. Uh, they rolled the dice. What is it? What is it? I agree on bards, NPCs only. Yeah, I consider them to be expert hirelings, basically, and I would treat them as a kind of a chronicler of the adventures of the players, and they can carry a pack or do whatever. Maybe they can sing a song that will boost their morale if necessary. Actually, there's a very similar mechanic in Fallout that our one of our players was using today, where she was just cheering everyone on to generate very easy generate action points for the community pool. And she was really funny with it too. So we were all having a really good time with her. She was like, "Oh, you guys are doing a great job," because she didn't want to spend any more bullets. She had very limited number of bullets, and so she was trying to conserve them. So less combat and more cheering us on. So it was a lot of fun. Um, so bards are ridiculously powered in AD&D. Yeah, but it takes forever for them to get. Well, maybe AD&D Second Edition, which, but for AD&D First Edition, the one player that became a bard, he went through 7 levels of fighter and then 7 levels of thief, and then he decided to switch over, and that's when he became a first level bard, and it took him the same time that it took the paladin to get to 8th level, and the druid to get to 10th, the thief to get to like 9th or 10th. I mean, he kind of lagged behind the whole time, and then he and all he had was first level ability as a bard, which is not very impressive. I mean, yes, he had the combo of the thief and the fighter abilities, but it wasn't I don't think it was a great trade off. Every DM should have a talk with their players about sending notes to the DM if there is an issue with rulings. Yeah, I mean that's you know that's perfectly fine. I'm a lot more open than I guess some would think right from the bat. I don't mind if someone says, "Hey, DM, I think you got this wrong, but we'll talk about it later." That's fine. Like I said, if this wasn't the very first session with a brand new system and whatnot, I might not have been so open to dealing with it right then and there. But again, my perception of the situation at the time, right or wrong, is up to you to decide. But my perception at the time was that that was a good way to handle that particular question, because it's something that we're going to look to continue moving forward with. So I wasn't so much concerned about the interruption, but I can certainly see your point, Vic, in that. Having questions like that should be done discreetly. If if that's how everyone's comfortable doing with that, and that should be a session zero kind of conversation that the DM has with everyone and says, "Hey, if you have an issue with a rule or a ruling, just send me a private message and I'll take a look at it. Make sure you let me know, because I'm clueless when that thing comes up, because I saw that he also reached out to me in Discord, which I'm not looking at when I'm running a game. It's like I don't have multiple screens opened up. I just have the main screen, and I am dealing with looking at everything going on in Roll 20, and I'm not looking at Discord. I'm just talking on Discord. So that's the other issue. So let me know you're sending a private message, or send the private message in what we're primarily using to play the game. All right. So send it to me in Roll 20. There's a way to whisper in Roll 20 and do it there. So yeah, I agree with you that doing it discreetly is fine. That's great as well, and I do appreciate that. So again, like going back to when I could take this down, going back to my experience as a game master with so many different systems. I mean, at one point I was running 5 different systems at a convention, and 2 of them I had never run before. So that was the first time running a new game system at a convention. I was running Weird Frontiers and Shadow Dark for the first time. When I ran Blade Runner, I ran that at a convention for the first time. And um, when people come to those tables, so when people come to an indie game table or an OSR table, and feel free to chime in and disagree with me, but I think that when players generally come to those tables, they're coming to the table with an expectation that the game master is going to lean more towards rulings rather than rules, and the game master is going to be more um, more even-handed when it comes to flexibility of taking what the player asks for and either saying no, like Vic said earlier on, or saying, which I would never just say no and leave it at that. I would say no, and this is why. All right, and I had that come up in my game today. Um, the player asked, well, my character has a far better agility, and can she use agility plus melee attack for her, weapon that she was using? She was using a tire iron, and I said, no, it's your strength plus your melee ability. And she said, well, oh, that's not going to give me a very good chance, And I said, but that's that's what it is. I later then said, you know, if you were picking up a rapier or a fencing foil, then maybe I would say yes. In that case, you're using a finesse weapon. Then you could use your agility plus your melee combat. But because you're wielding something that's a tire iron basically, that's a bludgeoning strength based weapon that you're going to be using. So and she was perfectly fine with it. You know what I'm saying? She was perfectly fine with the discussion and the explanation as to why I wasn't going to allow that. And I thought it was important to say, but this is this is an opportunity if with the right kind of weapon where you could use your higher ability score. So again, that's the kind of thing um, that I think is important when you're dealing with your players as a game master. To have some flexibility, but it should be a reasoned, a well reasoned flexibility, or it should be a well reasoned no, you can't do that, and here is why. Um, so I think when they come to the table of an OSR table or an independent table, and they're seeing possibly a new system for the first time as well, they're going to be much more mindful of, well, maybe I won't uh, push this issue right now. I'll let it ride and see how things go. I'm going to put in an invite if anyone wants to join in the conversation directly. There is the invite, and you can jump in on that. And I'd be happy to, listen to you and listen to some of your experiences as well. And um, so, getting back to some of the videos that I was talking about from last week, where they were talking about, I know Joe the lawyer did one, and Eric Tankard did another. Um, Dungeon Craft did one as well, where they're all coming out, and I don't like to watch videos like their full extent when they're talking about a topic that I'm planning on talking about, because I don't want to alter my point of view. So after I do this live stream and everything, I'll probably go back and watch some of those and get the full gist of what they were saying. But I could see kind of the general direction that everyone was going in, was that um, there really is a uh, a dungeon master shortage, as as another pointed out here. revolving around 5e and most likely its new iteration, whatever you want to call that, D&D 2024. And there, and I think it's because of that dynamic shift that has been well into the works for a while now, going well back to probably the 2017 and forward time frame, where the real push is to just keep on giving power to the player to make these decisions and to push these things. And if they want to come to your gaming table and they're going to say, well, we're just going to, we're going to, all five of us are playing bards and we're just going to go from tavern to tavern to tavern to tavern and doing this whole social role play thing continuously, and we're not looking to do any kind of adventures, we're not looking to do anything other than just these tavern crawls. I've heard of this particular game that ran that way, and I'm sitting there and saying I just wouldn't allow it because I'm not having fun, managing that kind of a campaign, if you even want to call it a campaign. And I said that if I'm not having fun, then I'm not going to game master that. I'm not going to. I'm going to tell the players, listen, I want you to do other things. You could still, potentially play your bard characters, but this has to be interesting for me too, and that's just not interesting for me. And they would most likely just walk away, right? And then declare, oh, he's a terrible game master, or he's a terrible dungeon master, or whatever. And and then it's like, well, you know, he's taking away my player agency by doing that, where really I'm just putting into the confines of what the campaign is meant to be. um, and that shouldn't be something that is looked down upon, or seen as detrimental to the hobby, which I've seen others make that claim too. Oh, if you're denying player agency, and apparently like full player agency, then that's toxic for the hobby, and you need to get out, because that's not what the players want. So I'll see if anyone wants to jump in and talk about your own experiences, you're welcome to do so. So let's see. Roger, I think the bar has been raised so much with things like Critical Role that people feel that they need all these skills and scenery to run the game, let alone actually know every nuance of the rules. Yeah, but the weird thing is that Critical Role, virtually none of those players actually know the rules. They really don't follow them. So I mean, I think Mac Mercer knows the rules pretty well, but the others don't, or at least some of the others didn't really know the rules that well, and they were just doing, basically the rule of cool, like, well, whatever's fun to do is what they're going to do. It's the story gaming aspect that they're more looking to do rather than follow any kind of a rule structure for the game. But I do see your point in that, Critical Role certainly did introduce both something very positive and very negative. And when we talk about the Mercer effect, which you know not your average game master can live up to the expectations that are created by what people are going to view on that show. Um, but I think if enough game masters were pushing back on that idea that that's what the expectation is supposed to be. They should have pushed back on that idea and said, well, that's not a real table. That's not really how things work in a games, in a game session, and you shouldn't expect to see that. If that's what you're looking for, go right ahead, look for it, because you're not going to find it here, and I guarantee you're not going to find it out there either. Which is one of the reasons why I kind of laugh when I see that people are actually willing to pay people to run games for them, and the reason why is because not enough people actually want to run games for 5e or for any of the other mainstream, whether it be Pathfinder First Edition at the time. I know a lot of people left 5e to go to Pathfinder 2, but essentially, I think they're essentially the same game. Um, there's not that much difference between the two. That and again, I've never played Pathfinder Second Edition, so as always, feel free to correct me if there is a significant difference between the two. But I think that I'm talking about what players bring to the table as a thing, and I think those players bring the same kind of energy and the same kind of both positive and negative energy, and the same kind of expectations and even demands as they do in 5e. And I just don't see that same kind of a dynamic being expected at an OSR table or an independent game table. And that's where my experience lays right now. Is It lays with running, game systems like AD&D First Edition, or Castles and Crusades, or Shadow Dark, or Conan 2D20, um, Blade Runner, Weird Frontiers. I'm getting ready to run for the first time, most at a convention, Deadlands. I haven't run Savage Worlds yet, but I certainly intend to. And some of the game systems that I'm talking about are very relatable to Savage Worlds anyway. Um, some others that I've run, Gangbusters is another one that I've run fairly consistently at gaming conventions. And so all of those different game systems, I'm not encountering that expectation from players coming to the table. Now, maybe that's because it's also in a convention setting, or it's online gameplay, and it's I can't think of any time that more than one or two people just disappeared from my game on a even on a virtual game schedule. They just, without a word, without, they're obviously not happy with what they're seeing, and so they left without a word. Um, I've only experienced maybe that once or twice in um, these past almost 9 years of running online games. So that's not something that I come across. And at a gaming table in a convention setting, I've never had anybody walk away from the table at a convention. Um, so that's and there might be other reasons for that as well. I mean, that would truly look like embarrassing. If you're the one getting up and walking away from a table at a convention, because that's on full display for everybody to see, and and you're probably not going to look like you're the right one in that deal. So let's see. I bought Deadlands with the intention to run it, but my primitive brain can't wrap my head around the rules. Trim the rules down. That's what I did with Weird Frontiers. I mean, the rules in that are so multi-layered, with all kinds of different tokens and playing cards and this and that, and weird magic spells and all kinds of unexpected um, outcomes and modifiers to everything. And when I ran Weird Frontiers for the first time at a convention, I just trimmed all of that stuff down. I limited what my players were going to be asked to play to make it easier on me. All right, and I recommend you do the same thing with Deadlands. You just trim it down. You give them maybe, you give the players maybe 3 or 4 different choices of of character classes, so that you need to know that much less than that, or give them a choice of 5. I need one player to play this, one player to play this, and just divvy it out like that. That's exactly what I did with my Shadow Dark campaign. Was I said I need one magic user, one fighter, one thief, and one cleric. All right, and I limited the group to size of 4 players, and it's so manageable when you have one fulfilling that specific role and you have a small group of just 4 players. So that would be my recommendation to you, Devious Dungeons Painting, is to trim the rules down. When you're running your table, you're the one that decides that this is how I'm going to run the table, and your players are going to have just as much fun if they're being exposed to 60% of the rules as they would be being being overwhelmed with 100% of the rules. All right, so just my suggestion to you. I'm looking at some of the comments here. Hey, thank you, Mercurius. Good to see you. And yes, you just reminded me. I have five of those to hand out as well, so I will be doing that. And I always forget to do this. I have to go onto YouTube in order to do that. And let's go to live. Let's make sure. I just have to make sure that volume is down. Sorry. And so I am going to do that right now. Membership gifting. And oh crap, I never gave out. So I'm going to give out 5 now. And I'll have to give out the other 5. I'll give out the other 5 during my interview with Roger. You've all seen Roger here, so I will give out the other 5 on Saturday when I'm interviewing Roger. So Roger, in case you don't know, and I'm going to give him a shout out here. So here is Roger, and Roger is putting together his very first convention, and we're going to talk all about it on Saturday. So make sure you hit that live stream at 12 o'clock noon Eastern time, Saturday, this Saturday in 2 days' time. And he put together, or is in the process of putting together, the Central New York RPG game convention. So it's, and he could type in the link if you would. Roger, type that in there, and I will certainly post that. And yeah, that's going to be a really great time. It will be my first time. It's the first time it's running, so it's a first time convention, and those are always phenomenal. But I don't want to front load that too much. I want to wait until our actual thing, and I am going to give him the floor of that interview on Saturday. The full floor for as much time as he wants to talk about his convention, and what went into creating it, what was his motivation for creating it. Ooh, you live in New York. Yeah, so it's just outside Utica. All right, so now New York's a big state, so if you live out on Montauk Point and you're going to run up to Utica, that's probably like a 27-hour drive. No, I'm a little bit hyperbole, but it's probably at least a 3 plus another. Say it might be a 9-hour drive. I would think that's sure. Now you're making me nervous. No, I'm going to give you the full, I'm going to give you the full time. So you're just you're just talking. You're just talking amongst friends, and you're talking about how how you went about putting it together. Yeah, if you don't mind, Devious, where are you in New York? I don't mean an exact address. I just mean where in relation to Utica. That would be an interesting thing. Yeah, 24 of those are getting out of the city. Yes, that's true. 107 miles from you. Oh, so that's not too bad. My distance is longer. All right, so my distance is about 3 hour drive for me. So 107 is not bad at all. Um, that's about an hour and a half, I guess. Yeah, so definitely check that out, Devious. If you're around on Saturday, we will. I will be giving Roger the floor, and he could talk about Potsdam. Potsdam. All right, Potsdam, uh, North Country. Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be really cool. Yeah, your way. Yeah, he's like practically Canada. Um, but that's up near like Lawrence, right? It's up near that area. Yeah, it's still a 2.5. Oh, that's a 2.5 hour drive. 107 miles shouldn't take you 2.5 hours. Hmm. I guess it depends on. They're always doing construction, so you never know. Um, but anyway, getting back to the topic, and it's cool. It's cool to see that uh, Devious here is also in New York, and so we could start building our New York, New York cabal here of people running to the same conventions and everything. So ShireCon is another big one that I absolutely love going to. Um, and I don't mean big as in size of the convention. The convention's about 150 people, but it's one I go to every year. And you can see on my channel talks about ShireCon and Rising Phoenix in Milton. Is it Milton or Milford, Massachusetts? And Philadelphia area Game Expo is another one that I will always try to make, weather permitting. But let's see. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not like you have basically. Um, yeah, and that would be great to see you there too, Roger. That's going to be a great one, and it'll be cool if Tom can make it out to yours. I know I saw Ron from Philadelphia Area Expo said he might make it out to yours as well. Um, and then you have some other. Again, I'm going to save all of this for Saturday. Um, so this is kind of like a preview for Saturday's live stream as well. And like I said, I'll give out those free gifts, those last 5 free ones. Let's see who got unregistered hype cam, Tommy Brave, the Ahistoric Order, Nerdity, um, Pieter Ruan. Yeah, he's here a lot actually. Um, Killraven, um, and Killraven. So yeah, membership does have its privileges. So if you're a member, I don't care if you're on a free membership for a month or not. You get to come to my Discord, and if you'll get the role of member, and then you can join in any of my games that I happen to be running, provided if I have space and everything. So I'm working on getting one more game session a week, so total of 3 game sessions that I'm running, and I still play in one as well. So, and I think that's pretty much my capacity, is 4 game sessions a week. So that's basically 12 to 16 hours a week of gaming, if I can. But anyway, just cut through the Adirondack. It's a straight shot. Would that be? Is that 90? I don't know if that's 90. But anyway, um, back to topic. So anything else anyone wants to chime in on your experience running OSR games, um, potentially with like newer players, younger players that might have only experienced 5e before they got to your table. That's kind of what I wanted to delve into here. Or if you're running indie games too, so it doesn't have to be OSR. It doesn't have to be, you know, D&D BX or Basic Fantasy or Lion and Dragon or anything like that, or Castles and Crusades. It could be games like like Fallout or Call of Cthulhu or other game systems that are not D&D adjacent as well. And um, do you find a different just source of just their participation and how they come to your table and how they're interacting at your table, knowing that your table is not a 5e table or not a Pathfinder 2 table. Um, so that's really what I'm looking to delve into as a discussion on that, and to see if your experiences are either similar to mine or completely different than mine. Again, I certainly welcome it. And well, thank you for the membership, Devious. That will certainly get you in there, and you can head over to my Discord and just let me know that you are a new member. And the same goes out to those that are, just got gifted one, and you will get the role, and then you will have the access to all of those games. And so, Devious Dungeon painting. So, I'm assuming you do a lot of like miniatures paintings and things like that. If you do, then I have people like Ducato that is big on my channel, and he is in there all the time putting up his miniatures painting. So there's a whole section on there for people just doing their miniatures painting and showing those things up there as well. So if that's the kind of, now if you're an actual like I shouldn't say actual, I just said everybody. If you're an artist and you actually do artwork like that, particularly painting and everything, that it would be really interesting to see as well. But I'm assuming it's miniatures painting. So yeah, I will put up the invite one more time and see that we see if anyone. I almost run exclusively OSR games. My players have found out that they need to be more careful in what they do in game, as death awaits around every corner. Yeah, and that's something like and I think I've told you this, Roger. When we were having a talk, and I relay that experience I had at Page One, which is the Philadelphia area game expo, where I was playing at Frank Metzner's game table, sitting right next to him actually, and he had 16 players. There were eight on the table at the table, and then the other eight were sitting behind us, getting ready to fill in the spots because he basically told us that this is a game this is a game session that's going to be very unforgiving, and he wasn't kidding about it. And players were ranging anywhere from in their early 20s, to their up into their 50s. Now, I mean, none of us were as old as Frank, but certainly in their upper 50s, like myself, and maybe I don't recall anybody else that was even in my age range. So certainly younger than me, and as young as in early 20s. And even as their characters were dying, and I mean, of the 16, 11 were killed during this adventure, and no one No one griped about it. Frank had everybody right in the palm of his hand. And it was, just the enjoyment. And even when player characters were killed and they stepped away, they stepped out of their seat and someone would sit in front of them, they stood there the whole time. They just watched the whole thing run through. They came to a table with a different expectation. All right, and that's what I'm really driving at, is that I believe the expectation at an OSR or an independent table is so different that even when players with other expectations for a 5e table are not going to bring those same expectations to an OSR table. Yeah, so you're definitely going to find people on my channel, on my Discord channel, that do the same thing, and you'll definitely want to check them out as well. And I'd love for you to put up your pictures and everything like that. I'm a horrible miniature painter. I was like, this is my. These are the miniatures that are my crowning achievement so far. I still have to finish his skirt. I stopped working on him about 8 months ago, and this was the first one that I had finished up in in the most recent years. And all it is a um, I mean, the only thing I did really well on this, and it's really hard to see, the camera's not that great, is that the feathers of the arrows and the shafts of the arrows are actually, independently, like, painted. They're different color, and I even got the band on the quiver done really well. I wish I could show a better picture of this, or you got a better view of this, but that's my crowning achievement of painting. Yeah, Reaper, Orc, and Skelly. Yes, they are Reapers. They came with the starter kit of the things. So yes, that's that is the full extent of my paintings. And all, I have hundreds of minis from like Monolith Games, with like the Conan game and the Solomon Kane game, and not a single damn one of them is painted. When I go back to the day when I had like Ralph Partha and those things, Grenadier. Um, some of those I painted, as a teenager, but they're just a um, they look like a kid painted them. Although these are not that much better than those anyway. So yeah, I'd love to see your work and check those stuff out. Check those things out. You just got your Reaper's Bones 6 pledge. I've got too many things to paint. Yeah, there's just way too many. Like, if there's hundreds of pieces in the Monolith games, that I have, both the Conan and the Solomon Kane. I would never be able to paint all of those things. So, getting back to topic at hand. And I did put captions for this time, so like prompts and everything. So I am kind of freewheeling this and seeing how we go. But again, anyone else? I wish I had all of the old minis I painted when I was a kid. Yeah, yeah. It's you know, I used to have, and maybe I still have in my basement someplace. I got to go digging through a bunch of stuff, but I had Thrud the Barbarian. All right, from White Dwarf back then, and that thing's like $100 now, unpainted on eBay. But I had Thrud. I had the one with the lizard man in it. So it was that was either Ralph Partha or Grenadier, the box set of the swamp creatures kind of thing. So I had that. I had a few of those painted, and then I had a black dragon that I really loved. that was, that one I painted pretty well for the day, for the time. And those were the only ones that I really, really had and actually painted. So I'd love to find that thread again and see, probably do some touch up painting on him. I got to go digging through the basement to see if I find it. It might have even been either thrown out or whatever during the 40 years since I've seen. Well, the last time I probably saw it was 2000. So in the 24 years, um, I haven't seen it in 24 years. So again, experiences. So let's get some. So hey, O'Neill, how's it going? Good to see you. And I know you run. You run quite a few game systems and everything. So have you experienced the same thing where people coming to an OSR or an independent table are far more, don't carry the same expectations that they normally would to like a 5e table or or a Pathfinder table or any other mainstream, where their expectations might be, very different, um, at those tables as they are at yours, perhaps. I've seen a reluctance in non 5e games as modern LGS players are invested in their Therian characters they self insert into. Plus, there is now a rise in no character deaths play policies, just defeated. All right. Yeah, if that's, is that a convention policy, or is that something that's coming up in Adventures League? I could never run Adventures League. I could never. I wouldn't want to play in it. I couldn't run it. I could never look at those rules that are outside of the actual game rules and actually conform to those things. It's like, no. It's like, if some of them have, like, you have to allow for every single character race or every single character class, or you have to allow for this particular set of rules or whatnot. And if not, you can't officially be running an Adventures League. And I couldn't do that, because the few times that I've played 5e, the only times that it was enjoyable was when the game master said, "I'm not using death saves, and there are no short rests." So that's, that you wouldn't be able to pull off in Adventure League. So even where they're pushing to have, they're pushing people to just play online and really in the VTT space. They're also simultaneously at the same time further and further restricting what you can do at a live gaming table in a convention setting. And to me, that's just, it's so counter to, you know, to the point that they're complain, oh well, there's a DM shortage, and it's like, well, of course there's a DM shortage in 5e, because you're doing everything you can to make them in the service of what the players want to be done at the table. But when those same players come to a different table that isn't running that system, then they seem to be more open to um, sitting down and playing in that system. I mean, maybe a convention is a different dynamic, and so they're more willing to at a convention table than they would be at a local gaming shop or online on a on a using a VTT online. But because when you're in a convention table and you have a time slot, you're looking to do something to fill in that time slot. There's nothing worse than, having, 6 hours of open space, with nothing to do. So you're going to want to land at least one table to go sit at, and maybe that's why they're more willing to accept. Well, I'm going to play this pre-gen, and I'm kind of just going to get along and do and follow whatever the game master does. But when they go to it, when they go to another table, back in their, back at home or whatever, they're not going to conform to that same dynamic. But I'm surprised that this whole thing was really coming up last week and across so many different channels. And I was like, nothing's really changed. I mean, this has been the push for quite some time. Okay, and we got Paul. Hey, how's it going, Paul?
Hey, hold on. Give me one sec here. I got to mute the stream. There we go.
Yeah.
I was hearing you twice, and it was kind of
Oh,
driving me
okay.
crazy.
Yeah, that happens. That's like when I give away the gifts, I have to remember to
Gotcha.
turn it off because you can only do those in YouTube, and you have to open up the actual stream in order to do that. So
Right.
hey, how's it going?
It's going okay. So, yeah, as far as 5e players, I guess my question is are they even worth holding on to? To be honest, I just had Gamehole Con this past weekend, and their Adventurers League was in a separate hall, and they had 80 tables running the whole con, and I don't think I saw a single one of those people, and I had a perfectly fine time. So I think there's
Yeah,
enough of a player base that really you don't need 5e players, because some of them are beyond salvaging. I've tried. There's some people
yeah,
who just like they won't try. They won't, whatever you try to put them in, they're just going to give up really quick. So
yeah. There's, I mean, I have had 5e players at my table, and they tended to be young. Like
yeah,
I had my table. I had one time a 14-year-old and the other time a 16-year-old at my table. So both clearly, 5e because they had played. They said they had played Dungeons and Dragons before, and they were playing in my D&D Beck Me campaign, and the 14-year-old was fine. All right. He wasn't a problem. The 16-year-old, um, he was in Germany, and I don't know, his mom had like a strict bedtime for him. That's a 16-year-old, so it tended to, now with the time zone difference and everything, it was probably like, 2 o'clock in the morning for him when our games were wrapping up. So I could potentially see that was a real big issue, but that was his big, and once in a while he would fall asleep too, during the game session. So understandable, but I didn't have a problem with them. The only time I had a problem with somebody who was strictly a 5e player when he came to the system was somebody who was, really in his 40s, and, came in and was like, I've only played 5e, but I want to, check out this system because I hear a lot of good things about it and everything. And he turned out to be like a spotlight player, wanted his character to, be the driving, everything surrounding what his character wanted to do, what his, and it was bizarre. To me,
right.
it was bizarre coming from somebody who is, you know, practically in his 40s or maybe, late 30s, early 40s, and having that kind of a need for that kind of thing. And as time went on, there was more and more like realizations of what was really going on because another one with like an identity crisis in the span of that 6 weeks or 8 weeks that he was playing with us. And it ultimately ended up with him literally bawling, crying, that he doesn't feel like anyone really cares about his character because they won't devote all the time, to what his character wants. And it's like,
Yeah.
he
But
was. Yeah,
that's the problem with 5e is
yeah,
you're starting to step into psychological issues, and that's not what a role playing game is made to handle. We're not here to be your therapy group. We're not here to
yeah,
be your sounding board.
yeah,
You go see a professional. That's really what the guy needed if he's in his 40s handling things like that.
yeah.
That's,
So I don't necessarily think it's it's an age thing. I've had now, of all of the 5e players that have come to my table and played at my table, and I probably had at one point, like over the span of a couple years, maybe like 20 came over, played in the game systems that I was running, and maybe only two was like, I'm going to go back to 5e. I like that better. I was like, fine, that's perfectly fine. I get it. That's just your preference or whatever. Just like my preference was the exact opposite, right? I played 5e about 6 times, and I was like, it's just not the game system for me. I just didn't feel like it was Dungeons and Dragons for me. And whether it's a good game or not is really, if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. So that's the bottom line of it.
right. Well, I think that's that's always going to be kind of the riddle of Dungeons and Dragons is
Mhm.
finding everybody's going to have the edition that is this is D&D to me. I'm an oddball. I think 4e is D&D because D&D is a combat game. That's all it's ever been. I've had
Yeah,
people try to argue it to me otherwise. Every time you play D&D, it devolves into killing things and taking
yeah,
its money. So 4e just kind of did it the most efficiently, if
yeah,
we're being honest.
yeah. That's that's and I could probably see, like, I have 4E. I've never actually started digging into it. Certainly never played it or ran it. Um, but I was a big MMO player. So if
Right.
it's MMO, on paper, I might actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there's a certain mindset that you have playing an MMO, and so if it translates like that, then sure, I don't mind playing a superhero, a fantasy superhero, if that's what, the system is meant to be.
Right.
So if I went to a table, I would go to that table, and that's running 4E, and I wouldn't bring my own expectations to the table. I would see what's coming, at me, and say, all right, I will then modify, and I will fit in to what you have going on at your table. It's like when I go to when I play at a convention table, I'm like really quiet for like the first, you know 20 minutes to a half an hour, just get trying to get what the game master is looking to put out there, and then I start getting into the groove of it, and that's when I start really participating, in what's going on at the table. But I like to feel it out a little bit first.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think there are certain people who do give it kind of a little bit of effort. We had one guy because we had a store open up down the street, and it was like, all right, guys, we're all starting to hit our 30s. It's time that we become the guys that proselytize and hand down the
Hmm.
knowledge of the old to the young kids in all the games. And when we jumped in, yeah, we had a guy who was maybe in his late 20s, I'd say, and he was huge into Critical Role and 5e and all that, and he was playing anything we were playing. But I think when we started off, we did the Iron Kingdoms RPG, which is
Okay.
almost like a miniatures combat game with role playing kind of stapled onto the side of it. But he kind of started off with those guys' tendencies where he was like, all right, I'm getting dynamite, I'm lighting things on fire, I'm killing people, just kind of like taking out all of his id and just kind of spilling
Yeah.
it into the game as wherever he wished. And it was like, all right, this is what he's going to do. But it came to the point where he's like, I want to try running a game. I want to do 5e. And he had this whole world set up. And it came to us as the players from somebody else who was like, yeah, he's saying he's really worried that you guys are going to kill his NPCs and this and that. And then it dawned on us, oh, he's writing a book. That's what he's
Ah,
doing. And we're going to be walking through his book, and it's going to be very
yeah.
boring and lame. And it did end up kind of blowing up at a point because there was some kind of ritual that some necromancers were doing, and we had a wizard in the group. I think in 5, I've only played a little bit of 5e. The wizard that we had was specializing in necromancy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a warlock. So after the ritual was all done, I was like, okay, we're gonna rub our heads together because I'm a warlock and he's a necromancer. We could probably figure out what they're doing. And he's like, no, you need to take this orb and go all the way to this other continent and do all. And I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. At that
Yeah.
point, that was where I realized, like, you're running us through the story. We're not doing it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta let us be able to do things. Otherwise, why are we here?
Yeah, and that's the thing with the, that's where I don't know if you were here earlier on when I was talking about, there may be a different concept of what player agency is. You
Yep.
know, um, there's the one where player agency that's a more modern view of player agency where I get to do with my character what I want, and you absolutely can't have me lose control of my character, and my character can't die without my permission, and which is a thing. I mean, that's literally a thing now,
Yeah.
and to me as an old school person, that my first game master was, hey Flint, how's it going? Um, my first game master was like, oh no, there's no resurrection or in the world. Why would a god give you the power of life and death? It was like,
Right.
if you try to resurrect somebody, the gods of death will strike you down, or life, whatever, will
Yep.
strike you down dead, and we begged him, like one of my, one of our players, his character for like 6 years finally, was finally killed, and was like, oh, I just want to, I we'll go on a quest, we'll go on like a really dangerous quest to, just let it be a scroll that no one can learn from the scroll, like a one-time use thing. you know our DM put the damn scroll in the Tomb of Horrors.
Yep. There you go.
Now,
Yeah.
he warned us. He says, don't go in there with your primary characters that you've been playing for years. You know, come up with secondary characters, give them some kind of a how they're related to this whole thing going on, and then use them. And went in, all 5 got killed. Came out, then we're like, all right, we're going to use our primary characters because they're powerful, and they might be able to, handle this. Went in with another 5. The first 2 got killed pretty darn quickly, and me and the other 2 turned our characters around and left. And we're like,
Right.
now we're not going to ask for, we're not going to ask for resurrection anymore. That's a done deal. It would be safer
Yep.
to wait for a wish spell than to do something like that, and that was our mentality, and we did that as, you know 14 or 15-year olds, or maybe 16, but for the most part, I mean, we were teenagers when we learned to deal with a game system and a game master that was that unforgiving with things. And you know many modern players can't handle that kind of a situation. They put into their too much into their characters, and too much. That's why, those long ass backstories for a first
Right.
level character. I was like, no, a first level character, maybe 2 paragraphs. You
Yeah.
know, um,
I think usually what I tell people is, because there are those people who, if you write any backstory, they roll their eyes and they're like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's one thing I hate about D&D is this guy just sprouted from the earth and he is now a fighter who can
yeah,
fight better than most other people." And it's like, no, there should be some history behind it. I'll give you 3 bullet points, each of them one sentence. That's
right,
it.
yeah, yeah. It's
You
like,
know?
I'm most like, where did you come from? What did your parents do? Why are you adventuring? Kind
Yeah.
of thing. If you can wrap that up in 2 paragraphs for a first level character, fine. If you're second level, maybe you could have 3 paragraphs. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Right.
just let me know, how many, but, you're not going to have a page unless you're like 6th level. Then maybe you'll have a full page of backstory.
Right.
But for the most
Because
part,
usually it seems like, regardless of the role playing game you're playing, you've got an idea when you're putting numbers to paper for
yeah.
trying to make the mechanics work for him, but you really don't get the feel. You don't break the shoes in, as it were, until maybe about 3 or 4 sessions, and then you kind of start to realize, okay, I've got a few mannerisms. Okay, that
Mhm.
he does this and this, and you usually base it off of things you did in the game. Like, why did I respond? Okay, maybe I don't like the way he looks. It reminds me of this, and you just kind of work it in your head, and that's how the backstory comes up. So
Yeah,
it's good to tell them, like, don't front load it, because that stuff's going to get thrown out. I've had
yeah,
characters like that where you're like, oh, it's going to be all about this, and then when you start role playing the character, you're like, that's nonsense. I've got it
yeah,
right here now. I figured it out. You have to just kind of,
yeah.
I don't know, kind of get the motor started.
Organic. Let it happen
Yep.
organically. It will just happen. I
Yep.
mean, I in my AD&D first edition campaign that lasted 2 years and 2 months, they didn't have a real concept of what the overall adventure would be. The overall arc would be for 16 sessions. I mean, like their group didn't have a name until 16 sessions in. You know what I'm saying? It was like, and I didn't have even a real concept of where the whole thing could potentially go until we were about 16 sessions in. And then it was just a nature of a few things happening, from player decisions that were taking place that I was like, oh, cool. All right, that's what I'm going to do with this thing now. And
Right.
it kept on evolving over time, but there was that real thin line that cut through all of the 2 years where the last 2 months was the final, the grand finale kind of thing, where all of the puzzle pieces started coming together and we completed a campaign, a story arc that took them from level 1 to, the druid was level 11 and everybody else was 8, 9, or 10, mixed in there based on class. And it was but
And
I
which edition was that?
first edition AD&E.
Oh, so you were having the druid have to do battles or whatever, like the Highlander for his circle and all
Well,
that.
that would have been the case, but their ultimate adversary was dark druids
Oh,
that
there you go.
violated that rule. And so when they were fighting these druids, they were fighting druids that were like 16th level druids and everything
Oh,
like that. And
wow.
we're like, holy crap, this is bullshit.
Yep.
Well, that's why they're, and I twisted a lot of stuff into it because it was a Greyhawk setting too. So it
Yep.
was, um, it was like, I don't know how familiar you are with like Greyhawk
A little
deities and
bit, yeah.
stuff, but so Waystry is a deity of bigotry and self deception, right? So his followers are self deceivers. So these dark druids had been deceived themselves in thinking that they would have to wipe out all the demi-humans in Yeomanry where they were, and as part of their bigotry thing, and they thought that they were still being neutral, you know, um, and that the rules for fighting for level 12 no longer applied to them because that put nature in a disbalance, so it all kind of tied in, at the very end. And then the players were like, wow, all right, we feel like we've actually completed an arc, that there were just so many different winding, paths, and then it kind of all came together at the end, and it wasn't linear in any place in my mind. It was just, it just happened. It was just so organic, and that's the kind of thing. Because the other flaw in 5e is that they don't have long campaigns.
No.
All right. They're doing 6 session campaigns, or, maybe a couple months at the most. And characters are leveling up so fast with milestone leveling and that kind of thing that you don't really get a true sense of character development along that time. So there's no way for characters to change over time either, and
Right.
have a true, like, even if they have like a, what do they call it, like a restitution arc or something, like, or where they restore their honor or whatever, because you can't have like a fallen paladin, and then eventually redeem themselves. You can't have a redemption arc if your campaign is short. You need
Right.
a campaign that's months, if not years long, in order to have that kind of development. And um, you don't have that in 5e as
Yep.
compared to other systems or other. I hear about people. Well, I mean, Frank Metzner is a different. He's running the same campaign for 35 years, but there's a lot of others that, oh yeah, I've been running a campaign for like 12 years or 15 years, and I'm like super stoked that I had one that was 2.5 years. Um, in a modern era, because back in the day ours ran for like 8 years,
Right.
of 6 days a week, 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were kids, so
It's
it was
it's
after school every
it's
day.
it's interesting about the low amount of games between campaigns. I think the first time I heard that, I played in a Shadow the Demon Lord game that Rob Schwalb was running over at GaryCon, and he was kind of talking about the design conceit of the game being I think it's only 11 or 12 levels. You go from 0 to 10 and then you're done. And he's like, we did that because the marketing showed that people are done after like a dozen games. Like they don't play anymore. They just get in, try it out, and then they're out. So he was like, well, we'll break it down to this. It's an interesting system because you
Mhm.
start off very novice level where you do
Right.
kind of like a cleric fighter thief. What is that? Cleric fighter thief. What's it? Oh, a magic user, or like the
Mhm.
four bases, and then it kind of
Right.
splits down from there where it branches out into a lot of different options. But after you're done with like the 11th, you could play at maximum level, but usually you just retire and restart and just do it again. And I
Yeah.
was like, huh. And I guess most recently they said that it's dropped down to like about 6 or 7 sessions, and then people are just kind of burnt out or
Yeah.
wrapped up, and that's all they needed. And it's like, I guess that's all they needed to figure out. They didn't really like D&D in the first place. They just kind of liked watching people play it on a TV show.
Right.
Know?
Yeah. Which is so detrimental to the hobby.
Right.
In having like in feeding into that mentality is just bizarre. It
Yeah.
really is. And Wizards of the Coast were the ones that first came out, and they admitted, they were like, "Oh no, the average campaign for 5e is 6 sessions." you know, Players are only playing it, and that's why they wanted to try to focus on, well, you really can't do anything really cool until like your fifth level, and so most campaigns don't start at first level. Most campaigns start around fifth level, fourth or fifth level, and then they'll go up to 10 or whatever, or they do high level campaigns because now they're all practically demigods walking around with all kinds of magic items and artifacts and everything, and they basically steamroll everything. But that's or you have, like I was talking earlier on, you have the five bards that are going bar hopping, and all they do is they do social interaction the entire time. And that's all that they want to do. They don't want to go into dungeons. They don't want to fight anything. They just want to go from bar to bar to bar, singing songs and interacting with NPCs, and that's it.
Right.
So it's it's a totally different mindset that I think that when they do come to an OSR table, they're either they're either holding on to that mindset and they're not compatible, like you
Right.
like you were saying earlier on, or they kind of let go of that because the situation calls for it, like at a convention, where they'd rather spend the next 3 hours doing something rather than 3 hours walking around and looking.
And I guess it's what their definition of game is. I played the worst. I haven't done my write up or synopsis of all my events for this past con, but the one that was the most disappointing was we signed up for it, and it was like, okay, the game's going to deal with themes of like suicide and darker stuff. Just be aware if you're going to sign up for this. And I was like, yeah, we'll try it out. And they said it's going to focus on role playing, and we got in, and it was we did a mock combat as if it were 5e, but it turned out we were a bunch of kids playing, and then it devolved into like a young adult manga that the kid told us, and we just kind of sat there listening to it, and I was like, that's not a game. Like, that's my
Yeah.
problem with it. Like, if you want us to interact in character and all that, there has to be a random element, otherwise it's not a role-playing game.
Yeah.
Otherwise we're just here telling a story, which I'm fine to do, but you need to set that up in the events as not a role-playing
Yeah.
game. I was here to try out some kind of interesting system he developed, and it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's like, if you have the 5 bards doing the bar hopping, yeah, it's a fun thing to do, but it's not an RPG. There's no kind of game behind it. You're just kind of having fun.
It's the fun thing to do for a session, maybe 2.
Sure.
But then it's all right. It's time to get to adventuring now. It's like, all right, you played
Yeah.
around enough. I would have so many consequences of them not doing anything, that are negative consequences going on up and around them, that they would either feel compelled to go do it, or they would be forced to do it. It's like, hey, we
Right.
hired you to take care of this, and you're not taking care of this. You're bar hopping instead, and
Right.
now this problem is now 3 times what it was before. So
Yeah, and at some point you have to sit them down and be like, guys, why are we playing D&D? If this is what you want to do, like, we could just do that, and you don't even need all this extensive rule set that's actually kind of a little bit more complicated than it needs to be for what you want. So just play the bard game. Do whatever, come up with songs or make up whatever system you want, score points that way, and there you go.
yeah, the first adventure is the backstory. Yeah, I don't really care. Like, the backstory to me, like I said, was like 3 sentences.
Yeah.
This is where I come from. This is what my parents did. This is why I'm adventuring. You can
Yeah.
hammer that out in 1 paragraph.
Ideally, if I'm running, I like to have just a little bit of backstory. Like I said, the 3 bullet points, just so I could weave you into the story, so you
Yeah.
exist in the world. So you're not somebody who fell from space with no family.
Yeah,
You're not a murder hobo that popped out of the ground. If you have, like, oh, okay, you're going to this town, well, that's where your family lives, and you can stop in and do stuff. It gives a little bit more to the character than +1 to hit, +1 sword, all that. All the D&D conceits that are really kind of boring to me, but it fleshes them out. Just slightly, just a little bit. That's all I want if I'm running the game.
okay, Roger. We'll talk about that on Saturday too.
Shadow the Weird Wizard, yeah. He
Yeah.
had to switch to that because Shadow the Demon Lord's kind of... I got tired of running it just because a lot of the modules have way too many kind of just like dick jokes. I was like, this is really kind of asinine. I'm kind of done with the humor in this, or the supposed humor.
So games with a life path creation and in-game story advancement works well for this. I've run a few Traveler and Twilight 2000 games, which had great mechanics for this, even for one-shots. Twilight 2000, I'm a huge fan of Twilight 2000. I started playing Twilight 2000 in like 86 or 87. And I partly joined the army in 90 because of it. So it was like, it was just part of my, just mindset. Now, my father being a World War II vet had a lot to do with that as well, and, it was just that game. I could so much put myself into Twilight 2000 and into that mindset. And we ran, you never felt railroaded with that system, even running those modules, because those modules were very sequential. You know what I'm saying? You were going across Poland. You were going then, you were then pushing into here. Then you found your way back home, or you went out, and then you cut across the Ozarks, and there everything was so linear, but it didn't feel that way.
Right. I think what I really was impressed with the Twilight 2000 back in the day when we played it, regardless of what you got during the path system of character creation, if you had more experience because you were in the war more, you started off with more rads. If you
Yeah.
were a fresh guy, you would have better like starting attributes, so you had a lot of potential, but you weren't a veteran, so you weren't as skilled.
Right.
So it was like it had that cool balance of you couldn't create a broken character without having some kind of negative. So everybody had their strengths and weaknesses. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great game. I liked that, and I liked when you put the characters together, you had like a vehicle pool depending on how many players you had.
Right.
Because we had a big D&D game. This is back in high school, like my sophomore year, And so we had enough to have like a guy with a supply truck, an armored vehicle for the troops, like two
Mhm.
guys on motorcycles as scouts. So we had like a
Yeah.
little group that you could do everything with. It
All
was,
right.
yeah, it was really fun. They built it so that you organized as a group, and I think
Yeah.
that's another thing. Like you said with 4E, they definitely built it off of World of Warcraft, I think, or at
Yeah.
least just the
Yeah.
design mechanics of MMOs, where it was
Yeah.
like you have a tank, a healer, DPS. So
Mhm.
it's like you're building as a group as opposed to you have the
Exactly.
ridiculous 5 thieves and 1 cleric, and
Yeah.
you're like, how
Yeah.
is this an adventuring party? Well, we're gonna make it work, hook or crook.
The
So
only
here we go.
MMO, the only MMO that was actually broken by playing all of the same class in a group was Age of Conan. So, Age of Conan, we took 5 barbarians into one of the cave systems, to
Okay.
do a boss battle, and we defeated the boss in like 5 or 6 rounds. I mean, just boom, 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 destroyed. And we were able to duplicate that over and over and over again. And then you know, it was so early on in the game that they were still doing like bug reports and things like that. It was
Right.
during the open beta kind of phase that we were doing it, and they realized that because of the way that your powers would stack with each other, and then they would generate cooldowns, and then the bosses defensive cooldowns would trigger based on those. They would do those in anticipation of then the cleric piggybacking and doing something here, and the ranger doing something here and something else doing there. But when it was faced with the same 6 chained attacks
Yeah.
coming from 5 different characters, but all the same ones, its cooldowns could never compensate for that, and you ended
Yeah.
up just blowing it out of the water, instantly. And they were like, "Oh, we got to fix that," and that's when they started doing well, you have to have a set group to come into the dungeon. So you had to have one of these 5,
Yeah.
in there, and you really couldn't duplicate until those 5 slots were produced. And you could only have like one duplicate out of maybe the 6 you could bring in there. I mean, so many years back, I don't exactly remember. It was like 2009
Yeah.
that game came out, but it was the one time that you could see in a game system that it couldn't handle all the same thing. And tabletop role playing, I mean, you'd be challenged as a game master to run an adventure with everybody the same class. All right. It would certainly be a challenge in how to make it interesting, how to make it, whatever. I know I was running with a very large party in my AD&D group. I had at a maximum of 10 players at one point, and there were 2 clerics and a druid and a paladin and you know they had 4 different characters that could heal at one point. I was like, geez, I mean, I have to throw like the kitchen sink at them to be a true challenge. It was like, oh, fuck that, you're facing huge ancient dragons now. You're not facing anything that's and I incorporated the second edition rule of mass damage, and now you have to make a system shock check, a saving throw, just to survive mass damage anytime you took more than 50% of your total hit points.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the way to kind of shake things up whenever you
Yeah,
get to about 3 or more healers in the group for an
yeah,
AD&D group is like, okay, you've got a pair of mating green dragons.
yeah.
And I remember, yeah, we had to take care of that, and we had I think it was an arrow of dragon slaying. Luckily, the guy took out one of them, but then the other adult dragon got a breath off, and that I think killed 2 people and a key NPC.
Yeah,
And then I got to, I forgot what the negative is. Like it was 1 shy of death, but
yeah,
you're crippled for like I forget what it is, like D6 weeks while
yeah.
you're healing back up. So yeah, it's It
Yeah.
can be pretty vicious, but yeah, I think that's the thing too, is the idea of encounter balance. That's something where you see that being talked a lot about in kind of OSR circles, on whether or not that should even be a thing, or if people should just be able to run into anything in the monster book, regardless of level. And I guess it's where you fall on, but for me, it's like that'd be worthless. I mean, why would I just kill all these people with something like that?
Right.
For me, it's they need to
Mm.
kind of foolishly charge into it if they want to
Yeah.
die. Otherwise, I'm
Yeah.
not going to give you the 3 death saves or any of that nonsense,
Yeah.
or make it so your character can't die. But
No.
if you foolishly choose to, jump into the jaws of death, then, well, so
Yeah,
be
you're
it.
gonna die. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never liked characters dying, and it really always upset me when a character died just from like one bad roll. I'm like, oh shit, come on. So recently I had a player. His character died, and the way that we were going to do it was that his new character was already petrified, by a Medusa. And so when you come out of that, stone back to flesh and everything, you have to make a saving throw. All right, you have to make a saving throw, otherwise, and, and he
he
died too.
failed. Oh my
I was like,
god.
wow, your first character, had to make a saving throw and he died. Luckily, they did have a raised dead spell because he was considered to be just dead.
Hmm.
So they were able to cast that on him, and he survived that saving throw. And it was like, but you lose a full point of Constitution unless you get it restored. You need a greater restoration spell to restore that and everything, and you come back with like 1 hit point and everything. But it was hilarious because it was like your first roll as this new character, and he dies, right off that first roll. Um, so getting to Andrew's comment here, in my opinion, backstory is completely unnecessary. The problem it can create is forcing the DM and other players down paths they don't want to go, allowing backstory to develop after the player begins to try it. Yeah, it's like I said, my campaigns generally don't get like a concept behind them until my Castles and Crusades campaign. It wasn't until like 32 sessions, 32
Right.
weekly sessions, and then finally I was like, okay, now this is what your ultimate goal is, kind of thing. And how you go about getting there, we could spend the next year and a half before you actually get there, but you could be doing all kinds of side stuff. But ultimately down the road, that's where we're hoping you look into. um it's like, yeah, I mean, as character concepts, I think come a lot faster. Like you come up with a character concept while you're creating it. I think, like you said earlier on too, like you generally have that sense, and I don't think you're thinking about, or at least most players, I don't think about what did my character do before now. It's what is my character doing now, like looking to do now. It's like, what's
Right.
my motivation? That to me is more important. Like, I don't care what your backstory is. I want to know what your story is right now and what your story is going to become. That to me is role playing. That to me is developing a character from first to whatever. I still love starting characters at first level. Um, Although I'm going to dabble with my AD&D second edition campaign, my first of that, and have them start off at fourth level. But that's kind of built into the story that the campaign, basically, they're war veterans. So they're coming in after the war has already been going on for 3 years. So they're going to be fourth level and take it from there. And they're all connected in some way. So we're going to spend a couple weeks talking about that and how do their characters come together. So it'll be like an extended session zero, and then they'll pick up from that point on. My first time, doing that kind of a thing, just to see what it's kind of like, and whether or not, because this group of players I've been with now going on, a little over 3 years now. And so I don't think they want to start with with the dirt farmer just getting just getting off their farm for the first time and beginning like that again. We've done
Right.
that 3 times already. So I agree with you, Andrew, that backstories can become. I know everybody's probably heard that story of the guy that complained his character was killed in the first 5 minutes, and he had an 8-page backstory that he had written, for it. It's like, that's the kind of thing that can happen in a game system that is not so forgiving. That you get 5 death saves or 3 death saves, I should say.
Sure. I mean, eight page backstory aside, if I just randomly jump into your fresh game and you kill me with like a random breath attack and I just showed up, you better have a pre-gen ready for me because I'm not going through all the math work again to hammer out a fresh guy while everyone else is having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, backstory to me is a sentence or two explaining where the character is from and why they are adventuring. Yeah, exactly what I said. A first
Yep.
level cleric encouraged by their mentor to go out into the world in the service. Yes, and that's a thing.
And
And
that gives the GM enough right there. Does he want to
ah,
have
yeah,
okay, I know that you're involved in the church. I can have them show up
yeah,
on occasion if I need to drop a clue, or your mentor can send word or whatever. That's all it is.
yeah,
But if it's one of these players who's like, well, this has to be a major quest, and the mentor's like, Obi-Wan, I'm Luke, it's like, hit the bricks, buddy. We're not
yeah.
doing that here.
I love DMing for clerics because I make them follow the domains of their deity. And I was like, oh no, you're not just praying at night to get your things. You have to show that you've done one of the domains, in order to, that's your prayer is to actually live up to the domains or the rituals of the deity, not just say, oh, well, yeah, I'll sleep for 6 hours and then pray in the morning and have my favors of my deity. Yeah, it's like, no, but if you're a god of light, you better cast a light spell someplace, or you better bring light to where it's dark, or do something along those lines. At least once a day or even once a week for higher level. It's going to progressively get more and more that you have to do in order to restore that because you're going to be expected to do that much more.
So
So
that's why I like some of the cleric stuff they added in games like Dungeon Crawl Classics or Errant, where you have favor with your god and you're supposed to act within a certain, within
yeah,
the tenets of the religion. Otherwise, you'll get the disfavor, and then you can't have the powers anymore. Otherwise, in basic D&D, it's just another spell set. You're just a caster with a different kind
yeah.
of equipment list.
Yeah,
So
I've never. Yeah, that's why I don't run D&D that way. I never have. It's always been, you have to, actually do what your deity stands for. So the one time I played a chaotic evil cleric, and one of the few times I actually played a female character too. And oh, she was nasty as hell. I mean, and there was a paladin in the group, so she had to be like really, really sneaky. But we held to that first edition rule that paladins couldn't use their detect alignment on other party members because that's considered to be a violation of their code, right? So I had that, but she had to be really, really sneaky. And every time the paladin would go off, she would linger back. At one point we left a goblin in a cage, and she went back and she toasted him with burning hands, just put him to a crisp, just tortured the shit out of him and left, because she was oh, who was the it was Cyrodiil, or it was a chaotic evil god of death. Um, Second edition, I believe, god, and or a Faerun god. Uh,
okay.
but yeah, that was her thing. I think it's like Cyrodiil or something like that. Um, I'd have to go back and look again. But anyway, I mean, yeah, she was a really cool character until finally the paladin caught on. Because we had PvP, so character the paladin finally caught on, and he was like, nope, nope, I'm gonna have to. He had to kill her. So basically, it was like, all right, well, I fought him, but it stood no chance. So through my Beckme experience, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh yeah, no, I've got to check out now. I've got
Oh,
something to
okay.
do here, but it was fun talking to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll,
Good
I'll try to
talking
I'll
to you
try to
too.
jump in. I've
Yeah,
been jumping into your chats on
yeah.
occasion, and I just got my camera and stuff set up recently.
Oh,
So, but
cool.
yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah, no,
uh,
you're certainly welcome to jump in anytime. And remember, so on Saturday at noon, if you're available, jump in on that. Roger will be here giving the pitch and talking about his convention, and and I guess his Kickstarter too, because he has a Kickstarter out as well. So that'll be cool to hear about.
alrighty,
All
sounds
right.
good. Take
But
it
yeah,
easy.
thanks a lot for stopping in, and have a good one, Paul.
You too.
Okay, so though in my Beck Me campaign, one of the halflings going out adventuring, I gave her uncle's adventuring journal, which is full of exaggerated, ridiculous, big fish stories. Let me hint at lore. Lol. Yeah, yeah. That's it's an interesting thing to do because they don't have to be real stories or whatever, and it becomes part of the character's personality without it becoming something that they have to do. And that's an interesting way to give the characters something that doesn't require them. It's a nice story to tell, but they don't have to do anything with it. Um, Fallout gives every character like a trinket, and that trinket helps them recover their luck. On a once per session or once per adventure or whatever whatever the game master wants to do. And the trinket has no real power. It's just something that becomes part of the player's personality, and so it really is an interesting thing. Oh, it's something you backed. All right. Oh, I thought it was something you're a Kickstarter. So I'm not the Kickstarter. I just something I backed and showed up a few days ago. Schwab's sequel to Shadow of Demon Lord. Oh, okay. All right. So it was probably my confusion because I was probably rambling at the time and just picked up on it. Um, yep. So anyone else that wants to join in, you're welcome to join in. I usually run these things about 2 hours. So we do have like another 13 or so minutes. If anyone wants to, chime in and just talk about your own experiences with, with different kinds of tables or different kinds of players and players that come to your table with expectations that are really not your expectations, or have you gone to tables with certain expectations and had those expectations, either not met or met, greater than you thought you would, or were your expectations changed when you came to the table? Like I said, when I go to conventions, I like to play in a lot of different kinds of games, and I like to run a lot of different kinds of games. And so, the first time I played Weird Frontiers, which is really a DCC based game, I mean, it was it was just so much fun. And even though both my characters died, because when I go to a convention, I expect my characters will die. That's another thing that you need to bring to you when you go to a convention, is that you should expect that your characters will die. um, that's just the way that conventions kind of run, because you're doing a one shot. And so when you're doing a one shot, players are going to be far more bold with their characters, especially characters that are pre-gens or whatever. But I've also seen and I've tried to do this myself, I've also seen some great role playing being done by players. Like they really put themselves into their characters, um, and that's that's an amazing thing to see in a convention, in a one shot, and the players play those through. Yes, I do, Roger, have the physical books. I have the two of them. Um, so let's see how easy they are to reach. They're massive books. They're hard to reach. Looking at where are they? Bum, 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 bum. They used to be here because that used to be one of the games I was running on a regular basis. I don't know where they're at right now. That might be on my bottom shelf down over there, or are they with my DCC stuff? Yeah, they're with my DCC. Um, Down over in the corner, right past your name. Actually, if you look at your name on the tab there, Weird Frontiers is right behind your name, right by that box of dice, right there. But yes, I do have the books, and they're huge. And I just brought the core book. I did not bother bringing the Tomb of Magic because I was going to limit the players on how much magic they could actually have access to, because I didn't want that many magic users. Because the first time that I ran the system, I didn't want to put myself in a position of not knowing the rules of what the players were going to have access to. And so I limited their character classes to eliminate much of that. Yeah, the leather bound, I think, is both books. So it's like 900 plus pages. Yeah, I have the two 450 page books. So it's a lot. It's a lot more. I think it's longer in your version of it too, slightly longer. It's a whole lot of fun to play though, but it is a very very challenging system to run as a game master, and that's because the system has so many different layers. So your favorite Piedar's favorite one shot character I had was a 5e game where I was playing an arcane trickster rogue masquerading as a cleric pretending to be a super pious stick in the mud while robbing everything. Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's 900 pages combined. It might even be longer than 900 actually. It's huge, huge. Um, I think Fatal's that long too. Believe it or not, I think Fatal is like 900 plus pages long. But you can't find a physical copy of that anywhere. I think that was only on PDF, or maybe there was very, very few physical copies of that. But yeah, I think Weird Frontiers is probably one of the most pages in a tabletop role playing game. I don't think any others have 900 plus pages in just the core rule book and the magic book. I don't even think the new Dungeons and Dragons combined, the three core books, are going to come up to 900 pages. I don't think they're 300 pages a piece. I think they're like two and change. Not that I would bother getting them, but um, so I'm going to get ready to wrap this thing up because it's almost 9:30 and my family starts getting ready to go to bed for work. So as always, everyone, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. It was great to have someone join in. So thanks a lot, Paul, for doing that. And we, again, I see the GM or dungeon master shortage of 5e being the result of their own missteps. It's the result of their decisions to make to change the dynamic that was more DM centric to hyper player centric now, and to make the DM feel like he or she is in the service of what the players want, and that's not a good dynamic that is going to support people wanting to become dungeon masters. On top of that, you have the at the same time that very truncated concept of what a campaign is, and having it run just 6 sessions, and then the players are looking to, oh, we want to play something else, or not another game but different characters or whatever, or well, we're done with this group, we're going to move on and go someplace else and play with another group of players or with another dungeon master or whatever. And it just makes the encouragement for game mastering really does just strip that away, and there's no real incentive to doing that. Myself, once in a blue moon, I'll complain about being the forever DM, but I've always benefited from focusing more on OSR and independent games, and so I can always keep things fresh for myself um, by just starting a new session and continuing my old sessions with other game systems and keep on running those. Um, now I'm 39 weeks into my Castles and Crusades campaign. On my first week into Fallout, I was around 10 sessions in my Shadow Dark. My Shadow Dark campaign kind of fell apart because we had one player who passed away, um, one player whose work conditions changed, and then the other two that were in the group really have come over to my Castles and Crusades game because the Saturday night wasn't working very well for everybody either. So, and I had a number of weddings and everything coming up still, which tend to happen on Saturdays. So that was going to interrupt it anyhow. So, it's not easy to keep campaigns going, but it certainly doesn't help when the thrust of the company is basically, well, keep your campaign short, keep them at like 6 sessions long, and keep on just regurgitating that levels 1 through 6, or start them at 5 and go from 5 to 10, or start them at 15 and do levels 15 through 20. And if you're doing milestone, they're always going up levels. It's not like 15 to 20 is going to take you months to do. You might do 6 to 12 adventures, and you'll still get from 15 to 20 just doing that number of adventures. I am running the Fallout. So Modifius's Fallout, the 2D20 system. And we just had our first session today. First full session. The previous week we did a session 0, just making up the characters, and today we're just becoming familiar with some of the rules and everything, and so we're still kind of trudging along in this introductory adventure, which is to basically teach them the rules and give them a little taste of combat, and utilizing their skills and whatnot as well. Plus teaching me, this is my first time running the game system as well. So it really is designed to be like a learning experience while we're going through this adventure here. and so I really love the Modifius's 2D20 system. I think that it's a great system for certain genres and certain IPs. I don't think it works as well at all with, let's say, Star Trek, which I do have, but I don't like it for that system. I think it works really well with Fallout. It worked great for Conan. Um, I have it for, like I said, for Star Trek. I'm not a big fan of it for Star Trek. I don't think it works in that IP as well. So anyway, but well, I want to thank everybody for coming in, and I hope you enjoyed the stream. Again, Saturday noon Eastern time, I will be interviewing Roger, and that will be a lot of fun. I just finished a small Fallout campaign with some recent Indy Fallout game. I love the game, but not the system. This is why I asked. Yeah, so I mean, give the Modifius one a try. I mean, you can get the quick start rules for free. You get that as a PDF and everything, and just check it out. The quick start rules gives you enough to run the game, and you'll get a good sense of how the system works. So yeah, I've heard that there's another Fallout system out there. Unless we're talking about the same system, but I thought there is another Fallout game out there that not really sure, what it was called, but yeah, I suggest trying this one. Yeah, what system, Pieter? What system are you using? I'm using the Modifius 2D20 system. If that was for me, Roger, I'm using this system here. This one here. Were you rolling 2D20 for most of your skill checks and everything? And you had to get a number of successes. It's a roll low system. Oh, there was the one that the basic expert created, Atomic, I believe, and he switched it from D20 to 2D10 when the OGL thing happened. Yeah, but all right. D20, the OGL had no impact on D20 systems. It only had impact on if you were using the nomenclature from the other, from D&D. But anyhow, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining, and as always, I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a convention sometime soon. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the alert button so you'll get those alerts. And I look forward to seeing you on the channel more so for these live streams.